Firstly, thank you very much for inviting the Department of Energy to this panel. I think it's important to mention that we didn't one morning woke up and decide, we're going to go on this new road of implementing, firstly, renewables, but secondly, also independent power producers, which is something totally new in our energy environment in the country. It stems from various policies, not only specific energy-related policies, but also holistic policies. And I'm going to start with that to say that in terms of new development plan, which spells out very specifically how we need to deal with infrastructure development in the country and also job creation and other social development issues, we then also, in line with that, also a very specific energy-related policies that were developed over a couple of years, starting with the Energy White Paper in 1998, and then built onto that various other linked policies. Now, in general, government is very good in developing policies, but I think the important thing is then to take the next important step to move into implementation strategy process, which we did then in 2010 with on the energy side, the generation side, the so-called Integrated Resource Plan, which spells out annually what is the amount of energy that's required for the country up to 2030. And on top of that, what is linked to that was into a process to say how we go about delivering on those annual targets that's been set for various energy carriers. Now, just to put it in perspective, as you know, currently South Africa are generating, or the electricity that's been generated is 95% from coal-fired power stations. And in the new IRP program for the next 20 years, which we will require basically the same amount which we are generating now, like 42,000 megawatts. 42%, which is a vicinity of 18,000 megawatts, was allocated then through to the renewable energy means. And that wasn't just a figure that was randomly picked. It went through a very, I would say, scientific process where various stakeholder engagements and meetings, workshops, conferences, and eventually went through cabinet. So it's a very specific process that have been followed that have been broad-based. And I think that's one of the key issues. The second one is that we then, when rolling this out, you need a very specific program around your procurement, because procurement can make such a program stand or fall. And we realized in the beginning that this is quite an enormous program. It will be impossible to do all of this 18,000 in one go, so we break it down in eatable chunks. The first was 3,600 megawatts that we said we'll break down in 5 windows, and the rest we'll do later. So we start with a 1 window, second window 5. Now, how it's been done was that we developed a very simple procurement process that's always within government, but we never utilized effectively. To say that if you want to leave such a procurement process with a line function government department, it will take a couple of years to get it through because of various restrictions, various shortage of skills. And we then outsource this process to transaction advisors, which consist of experts legally, financially, technically, and so forth. So those were then the people that was sort of a arm's length away from the department. They haven't been even hosted in the department. They were established in a different environment, separate offices than us. And the only thing that the relationship between us and them was that the guidance on what we want to do in terms of the procurement was given to them. So the full detailed design was done by them. That includes the documentation. I think that's another very important aspect, that is very clear documentation need to be issued in terms of the investors that want to participate understands what it's about. The documentation was quite substantial, I would say. So that then went out. There was a very specific transparent process followed to evaluate these bids. Again, the department's limited involved. It is done through a very, very strict audited process. Nobody was allowed to enter in and out even of that specific environment for a couple of days. So eventually, when the process was completed and an announcement was made, there was no comebacks. Nobody was upset or challenge the process, because everybody knew in advance what was the rules, what the criteria will be, And even though the criteria is very specific to support our broader policies in terms of your job creation, social development, and also to make sure that it builds the economy on the basis. That was then followed by the fact that in the process of doing the evaluation, I think it's important that there need to be good cooperation between various government departments, in our case, between Department of Energy, National Treasury, and then also the entities involved, ESCOM, and also the Development Bank that form the entities on the government side. But also the very good cooperation between this government entities and the transaction advisors to make sure that they understand exactly what we want and that they can then communicate that through to the potential bidders. That being said, I think also, and I want to end off by saying that a couple of good things that we learned from this process was firstly that you need a very short decision-making period. You can have the best transaction advisors, but if there's a long time between when you need to make decisions and when the decision's been made, it also defeats the purpose. So I think that's one of the additional benefits in this process. Very short, and there's a good cooperation. Politically, it was fully accepted. It also been required as officials to get political decision-making. It was done very, very short term. Also, I think you need a champion. It's always been said in any success program, you need a champion. You need a champion on a political level. And here I can give credit to the Minister of Energy, our Minister, that was really a champion up till now in this whole process. And then dedicated officials that need to do their job as required. And then I think another one is if you need to be transparent, no corruption, need to be allowed in the process whatsoever, then there's nobody that can come back and complain. I think also important is that you need to make sure that the process for the bidding is not too complex and not too complicated. And I think that's one of the challenges of our process. It is a bit too complicated. And that's probably because of the fact that if you leave a process for too many experts in a room, then you design something and eventually that is so complex that it's something difficult, sometimes difficult to understand, even those that design it. So that is one of the negative aspects, but we're working on that. I think also a very important aspect is that you must understand there's a certain rhythm, there's a certain cycle that government is operating within. Also make sure that that process that you followed in terms of analysing your bids, making announcements, must also follow that rhythm of government. And that's a lesson that we had to learn. You can't allow such a rhythm to peak your bidding process, final analysis to peak in line with, for instance, your budgetary process. That is really problematic. So hence why we also shifted some of the programs out to later dates. And I think, all in all, what I need to say is that we learned from this, in a nutshell, that you need political buy-in, you need a policy, you need a strategy, you need an independent procurement process to be run, and then very importantly, in the end of the day, make sure that it adheres to your holistic policies. And then everybody politically, as well as on the administration side, is happy. Thanks.
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.